Hi, everybody. Let's start by putting ourselves in the cockpit of a DC-8 approach in San Francisco one night a while back. Everything seems to be normal. We can see the instrument lights glowing, and we can hear the crew members talking to each other, and hear the cooling fans and the engines, and all the instruments seem to be holding steady while we're approaching, while we're doing our descent to the runway. Suddenly, all that peace that we feel, that serenity, is shattered when the aircraft lands in the San Francisco Bay, about 2.5 miles short of the runway. Fortunately, nobody was injured. And of course, the NTSB is going to investigate this situation and try to figure out why that plane ended up in the water. Various experts give their testimony about what they think caused the accident. And then finally, it's the captain's turn to speak. And it's Japan Airlines, and the captain's name was Aso. So everybody's watching Captain Aso as he walks up to the stand, and people are thinking, what excuse is this guy going to give for putting his plane in the water? The investigator asked Captain Aso to tell the board in his own words what happened that evening. And why did his plane end up in the bay? Captain Aso cleared his throat and he spoke 3 simple words. Aso, screw up. That's it. No excuses. He didn't try to point the finger at the co-pilot or the crew or the flight guidance system. He didn't try to hide behind some sort of technical difficulty explanation. Just Aso, screw up. And by the way, you can actually search this. This became known as the Aso defense. And it leads us to an important principle about error prevention. We need to talk about our mistakes. It's the only way to learn from them. Also, it's the first step is to learning why people screw up, so that somebody, us, can actually do something about it. Now, we're not suggesting that you go out today and start making a whole bunch of mistakes so you can talk and learn from them so that you can prevent future errors. You can learn from us and our experience. For the past 27 years, we've trained thousands of people and listened to hundreds of stories from pilots, but from doctors and accountants, nurses, manufacturing techs, miners, every occupation actually, and all size companies, from the size of a Lockheed Martin to Phoenix Parks and Recreation Department. And we've learned from those stories and we've distilled it into some training. And we're happy today to share 3 of the proven error prevention steps that we've learned from all those stories.
Good morning, everyone. That was my partner, Ron Boneline. My name is Greg Gocher with the Error Prevention Training Institute. It's my pleasure to introduce our latest webinar today, 3 proven steps to reduce human errors and accidents. I hope you're all having an error-free day so far and can spend the next 25 minutes or so with us as we discuss human error and accident prevention. Our focus today is like our tagline, why smart people do dumb things and how to avoid the same mistakes. The 3 proven steps are part of what we will cover today, are part of our Error Prevention Basics online training program. That consists of 6 30-minute modules that take a total of about 3 hours, but in our brief time today, we will attempt to cover them at a high level. After the webinar, we'll make sure that you all have access to the full Error Prevention Basics online course for further review. So I'm wondering how you track and manage incidents and accidents today.
Well, Greg, it's a matter of clarification, and before we dive into the 3 steps today, let's take a quick look at what companies might already be doing to reduce errors. Look at that list. It's probably familiar. Some of the terms are probably familiar, right? But let me ask you something. Do you see anything that features directly human behavior? And would we think that humans are part of a mistake equation? We do. And so we ask the questions, why not look at the human factors like stress or attitude or health or others as a prime way to reduce errors? We do. And because we do, we hear all the time that human error prevention training is a foundation upon which companies build bigger strategic systems like Lean or Six Sigma or HPI, some of the things that might be going on in your company. And why is it a foundation? Well, it's simple. really, because humans need to do those things correctly for the big systems to work. So now, with that clarification, let's dive into those 3 steps we want to share about human error prevention.
Thanks, Ron. The foundation of error prevention training is based on human factors, traps that we can fall into, and tools to stop the error chain. It uses simple language and illustrations that anyone can understand, and it provides practical tools that employees learn easily and can start using immediately. We start first with the traps of human nature, so we can first recognize them and then do something about them with simple tools. Second, we will discuss the pinch and how to recognize it even if you're in the middle of a danger zone. And third, we will talk about a simple yet powerful tool called ASOP that we use to avoid a mistake or accident. These 3 steps have proven to reduce human factor errors for our customers. It's been said that to err is human. Our whole approach to the reason that people screw up is that there are traps of human nature that lead to the human factor mistakes and accidents. Of course, no one wants to make a mistake. No one woke up this morning and said, hey, I think I'll go into work today, see what kind of a mess I can make. But we do make mistakes, and we make them all the time, from little things like knocking over a glass of water at the table, an error in a math calculation, to the large mistakes like the Exxon Valdez or the Challenger shuttle accident that can cost huge sums of money and take many lives. So obviously there's something that can cause a safe, prudent, well-trained professional and a careful person to do something against their training or normal inclinations. In fact, mistakes and accidents are often, not always, caused by very experienced people with 10, 15, or even 20 years of experience, like Captain Osso. They are typically not someone fresh off the street who's never done the task before, not rookies. They may have done the task hundreds of times before successfully, but this time for some reason they weren't successful. They're called traps because when they're operating, the person being affected doesn't realize it and will actually make decisions that are totally against that person's training and normal inclinations. The exciting thing is that we can learn to recognize these traps and when they're working. In fact, one of the primary training objectives is to set warning flags in your head to alert you when these traps are working. Then we give you practical tools you can use to avoid and deal with these situations once you're aware of them. Many of the traps and tools that we teach are shown on this slide. Things like distractions, out-of-sequence work, new situations, improper procedures, complacency, hazardous attitudes, just to name a few. If you think back to Captain Osso in the cockpit of that airplane, what if he and his flight team had been trained on error prevention? Could they have detected that they were in a danger zone? That one or more of these traps might be working? Could the process we're learning about have prevented that accident? Who knows? But knowing the hazardous attitudes might be one area we could look into. This slide shows a few of them. And on a given day, Ron might have several of these.
Yeah, I got to confess, Greg, there's probably those days when that one on the upper left is something that I bring to work. But it's likely that for all of us, any given day, we might have one of those attitudes. And I got to ask you a question. Which one of those do you think you feel most often? And also, what do you think your best friend would say you exhibit most often? Remember, you'll bring that attitude to work, so it's important to learn about it. And it's important because it could save you from injury or from costing your company money. We found that a consistent result of a hazardous attitude is something that none of us want, and that's a sudden loss of judgment. We'll go back to Captain Osso and remember him and his crew. Do you think that because they landed that plane dozens of times before without anything happening, that they were feeling maybe invulnerable? Well, that's one of the factors that the investigation found.
Thanks, Ron. Once they start working against us, it's real important to recognize that it's happening. In fact, it's important to be aware of what's going on around us all the time, even when things seem to be running smoothly. As this slide says, error prevention starts with situational awareness. That ability to identify, process, and comprehend the critical elements of information around us, like a radar system. If our radar system is off, or we have poor reception, or we can't recognize the warning signs, we can run into trouble. Captain Osso's equipment was working on the airplane. The altimeter, good. GPS was good. Airplane radar was good. But his human factor situational awareness radar was off, thus limiting his ability to make good decisions and to take informed actions. Captain Osso screwed up. We think of error prevention basic training as a way to improve your situational awareness radar to help detect when you've entered into a dangerous situation. A simple personal example for me the other day, I was up with my first cup of coffee in hand and in deep thought about being behind on my work and needing to get a quick start on the day. So my laptop and mouse would first need to be moved back into my office so that I could get to work effectively. I picked up my open laptop in one hand and balanced the mouse on top of the keyboard with a full cup of coffee in the other hand and my notebook held under my chin. I started to head for my office when suddenly it occurred to me this is exactly what we teach people about. Recognizing that I was in a danger zone, I remembered the conservative response rule, which in a nutshell says, when in doubt, stop. So I put my coffee and my notebook down and decided to make 2 trips. My next thought was, hey, that was pretty cool, especially considering I hadn't even had my first cup of coffee yet. So if we can raise your antenna to detect the danger zones more quickly, to help you hear the ping of what we call an error-likely situation, then we can increase your ability to take actions, to move out of, or at a minimum move through, the mistake and accident zone without having one. Learning about the different types of traps and tools helps us improve our situational awareness and turn our radar on. And that is step 1 in the error prevention process.
Yeah, Greg, glad your white carpet doesn't have stains on it as a result of that. Well, step 2, the proven step 2, comes out of step 1 or rises out of step 1. And that's if we really know the traps, our radar will be up and we'll be sensitive to the existence of those traps. And that leads to what we call the pinch. Now, people typically have a pinch, and it's that funny feeling in our stomach that something isn't quite right. You get them all the time, and you might not have thought about them quite the way we're talking about, but you get them all the time. For example, think about times when you're backing out of your driveway, and you have this funny feeling that you're forgetting something. That's a pinch. Once you realize you're having a pinch, it's critical that you don't ignore it. You have to say something out loud, even to yourself if you're alone. You have to, otherwise we just typically just ignore that pinch. And like in that driveway example, you might end up, like I did the other day, getting to the office without your mobile phone. When we listen to our clients' stories about their accident and incident investigations, we almost always find out that somebody in that picture had a pinch. And what we also find out is that they either didn't speak up, or if they did speak up, nobody acted on it. And then noticing a pinch is, after you notice that pinch, then taking action on it is the proven step 2 to error prevention. Noticing a pinch and taking action on it is that proven step. Then when we feel the pinch and say something out loud, we can use tools to come up with a plan to either avoid or deal with that situation. It's really important, I got to mention this, it's really important for team leaders to handle pinches too. So when we train them, we coach the team leaders on how to encourage their people to speak up when they have a pinch, and then the team leaders to initiate action using some of the tools that are also taught. So far we've learned that number 1, traps work, and if we know about them, we will, number 2, feel pinches when something isn't quite right. That means we're either starting or we're in what we call the error accident chain. The chain puts us in that danger zone Greg talked about. So we need to break that chain. That's the role of the pinch. It alerts us to break the chain so we can get back to the awareness we need to be safe and effective. Now, once we feel that pinch, we need to do something. We can't ignore it. We mentioned using simple tools several times. It's a thing we should do. And using tools is actually the 3rd proven step. We teach people several tools. And I got to say that the power tool, the one that gets used most often, is one we call the ASOP Mini Huddle. Actually, thousands of people think the name of our training is actually ASOP because it gets used all the time in their jobs and personal life. What you see is a badge that employees wear. It's that simple user guide that's always available. At Lockheed Martin Space Systems, employees are required to wear this badge at all times. At a refinery, they put the image of this badge on their hard hats. That's how important and powerful ASOP is. Our class teaches lots of material on tools and on ASOP and the ASOP badge. The ASOP badge becomes the on-the-job cheat sheet for people. So how does this tool work? Well, once your radar's on and you feel a pinch, you say something out loud, and then you can run through an ASOP in a minute or two. We see many people and many teams actually use it at the beginning of their day or the beginning of their shift to make sure they cover all the bases that's going to happen that day. People also use it during the day when they feel a pinch. So let's just go through the ASOP process real quick. And the first step is to take a look at the assignment, the A. Is everybody clear what it is? Then you look at the equipment, what's available and is it working? Then you skip the S and you go to the O, and are there any obstacles that people look ahead and they might see that'll cause problems? And then finally, looking at all the people that are involved, even if it's just yourself, is everybody up to it, basically? Do they have the experience? Are there any risks associated with people? And then once we look at all those kind of areas, we can go to the situation and say, all right, what's our status? Do we go? Do we proceed with caution on the ragged edge? Or do we stop and resolve issues that have been uncovered? That's the power of a quick little ASOP. And a real live example, one of the training sessions, somebody had just learned about ASOP in their section of the training, and they went to a human resource meeting on a promotion board. And they just thought, I think I'll try this ASOP. And what they found is that right on the assignment, everybody in that room really wasn't clear what the process was and what they were supposed to accomplish. So they clarified it. They ran through the rest of the promotion board meeting, and people were saying it's the best one they ever had. And that was just a few minutes after having learned about ASOP. So you might think about a project that's coming up for you. It might work that well for you too. Don't be surprised if it helps you, even though you haven't been completely trained. But you might uncover a potential problem, or you might end up having a higher level of confidence in what you do. I'll give you another example. In a refinery where all the people had been trained on air prevention and ASOP, a team leader asked his best maintenance tech to go fix a pump. Since the tech is the best in the business, the leader didn't think he had to give any other details, but the tech felt a pinch. And because he had not worked on that model pump before, he asked his supervisor, let's run an ASOP. So they ran an ASOP, and they ended up determining that they needed to get the specs for the pump, get the written SOPs for it, and they avoided an accident, and all was good. You also might try using this at home with your family, in your personal life, and it does work in personal lives too. Now that's a power tool. And step 3 is to use this tool and others when you feel that pinch. So if we can recap where we are so far, step 1 is to know your traps. Step 2 is to pay attention to the pinches that come from you being sensitive to those traps. And step 3 is to take action by using tools.
Hey, thanks, Ron. So in summary this morning, in a few minutes, we've taken some time to discuss the human factors, traps and tools, the pinch, and the power tool we call ASOP. Together, they make up the foundation of our error prevention training course. The next question people usually have is, how hard is it to implement, and what are the results or ROI of implementing error prevention training? Now, implementation is a whole other webinar, but that being said, we have developed a nice best practices implementation guide that we can share. It gives you a lot to think about, from preparing for human error prevention training to training logistics to developing and sustaining an error prevention culture in your company. So does it work? Many of our clients, as Ron mentioned, we have literally hundreds of different kinds of clients. They track the reduction in human errors and the advantages that have come from their basics course. In addition to reduced errors, they found that it leads to better team communications, kind of a common language, continuous process improvement, and it serves as a foundation for other quality and safety programs. And with regard to results, most people are pretty tight-lipped about the kinds of things that they have going on with regard to mistakes and accidents. But one of our customers was tying it into lean manufacturing as part of their foundation for the program actually working. And when they started, they were experiencing approximately 40 significant incidents of damage to their products each year. The year after they started the error prevention training program, they were down to 20 incidents, and the next year only 8. So people are reporting that it's very effective, and it's very effective at their work and also in their personal lives. These examples illustrate the tremendous impact it can have on reducing mistakes and accidents and improving quality and effectiveness. So that's our story this morning. On behalf of EPTI, Ron, and myself, I'd like to thank everybody for your valuable time. As we promised, everybody who attends today gets access to our online training and your very own ASOP badge. We'll be contacting you after this with an email and seeing if you might be interested in getting that set up for you or members of your team.